The question asks if A Worn Path by Eudora Welty has done anything to promote equality for blacks, and my final answer is it does. The story takes place in Mississippi around the 1930s, and that's where racism and segregation were more on the rise. But the main character, her name is Phoenix, she isn't portrayed in a negative light, and it doesn't solely focus on the fact that she is an African American woman. Instead, it mainly highlights her on this journey. So the first thing I want to say was that she has a genuine interaction with white people. On her journey to go collect this gift at town for her grandson, she runs into this man who's a hunter. He has his dog, and when she runs into him, he doesn't try to just chase her off for being an African American, or a woman, to say the least. Instead, he actually has a question for her. He wants to make sure that she's alright, that she's not lost, that she knows where she's going. Because, stated in the beginning of the story, she is old. The quote says, "Well, Granny," he laughed, what are you doing there?" "Lying on my back like a June bug, waiting to be turned over, mister," she said, reaching up her hand. He lifted her up, gave her a swing in the air, and set her down. "Anything broken, Granny?" "No, sir. Them old dead weeds is springy enough," said Phoenix, when she had gotten her breath. "I thank you for your trouble." "Where do you live, Granny?" he asked, while the two dogs were growling at each other. "Away back yonder, sir, behind the ridge. You can't even see it from there." "On your way home?" "No, sir. I go into town." "Why, that's too far." And if he had frankly just didn't even care about her, he wouldn't be so concerned where she's going or what she's doing. If he just saw an African American woman, he would simply just let her go or badmouth her. And this actual, confusion, thought, wanting to know what she's doing, can highlight an actual genuine interaction with her. Another example is whenever she runs into this lady in the town who has a bunch of ornaments. She asks this woman for a favor, and the woman complies. If she didn't care about her in the slightest way, then she would likely just turn her away, say, "No, get out of here. You're a black woman. I don't want anything to do with you." And this quote says, "Please, missy, will you lace up my shoe?" She held up her foot. "What do you want, Grandma?" "See my shoe," said Phoenix. "Do all right for out in the country, but one look right to go into a big building." "Stand still then, Grandma." One thing I want to point out was that the characters aren't particularly being super nice. You can even see a little bit of irritation in the woman's voice by the way that Welty writes her. It's not that they're being fake nice, because then that'd seem very out of place for the time period. It's that they're actually being real in their conversation. They're not pitying her. They're not ignoring her color. They're seeing her as an individual. Even the nurse wishes her good, knowing that she has good intentions, and likely with old age, Phoenix has become a little, off and losing her senses, and she just wants to make sure that she's gonna go into this world being alright. Another thing I want to point out was that it doesn't solely focus on Phoenix's color. Welty doesn't just constantly mention, "Oh, she's an African American woman, this is all she is, she's this way," and insert stereotype here. No. She also doesn't portray her in a negative light. She creates her just as a human. When the nurse describes her, she doesn't just describe her as old woman, black, disgrace. Another quote is, "Oh, that's just old Aunt Phoenix," she said. She doesn't come for herself. She has a little grandson. She makes these trips just as regular as clockwork. She lives away back at the old Natchez Trace. She bent down. Well, Aunt Phoenix, why don't you just have a seat? Take a seat. We won't keep you standing after your long trip, she pointed. And the nurse here, you know what I was saying earlier with that genuine interaction, she doesn't just demote her at all. Instead, she really focuses on her age here. And I think both of those just kind of tie in together just a little bit. Also, the way that Welty writes in her stories, she's not describing her constantly as this black woman's doing this, she's walking. You know, it's established in the beginning of the story because it makes sense. It makes sense for her in this context, and if you didn't even mention it, then the reader probably would not know what race she is. But they establish it in the very beginning, and then it's implied in the rest. So when you picture her, you picture an African American woman. But not describing it 24/7 isn't it doesn't mean that it's just there for that one scene and that's it. It acknowledges Phoenix's color throughout the story, through little dialogue and just little tidbits overall. For example, what I was saying about that interaction, the hunter even says at one point something along the lines of, "Oh, you black folk love to go see Santa Claus." And she's used to that, you know. Likely in her days she's heard a lot worse, especially being old. And one thing about equality is that it's not ignoring someone's color. It's about having respect of someone despite their color. So it's not like Welty is trying to promote equality by just not even mentioning her color, because that's not really equality. It's just a white elephant right there. Basically, she wants people to be aware that this woman is a black woman and she should still be respected despite. Something also that Phoenix said was that she claimed that she had heard plenty of guns go off, implying, which could imply, it's not for certain, but she has seen lots of racial violence in her days. If it takes place in the 1930s and she's old of age, it's likely that she was born around the mid-1800s, which is where there was even a civil war, where one of the focuses was African American equality or freedom of slaves. This could or couldn't relate to could not relate to the fact that she is black, but she isn't addressed anywhere in the book by her full title. Everyone just calls her Granny or Grandma. She isn't addressed by her full name. So if you kind of get behind the author herself, she is a white woman growing up in these times around the 1930s, which is where this story was written. And a lot of people in that time period who were white did not like black people whatsoever. But something about Eudora is that, you know, she kind of uses her ability as a white woman to try to convince other people or tell other people that, hey, they should not be portrayed so negatively in other writings. Because during this time period, there were a lot of other writings about black people that were extremely discriminatory. And Eudora wants to break this mold and say, and you know, have a black character who is the main character, who is a woman. That's one thing. It's not just her sharing the spotlight with like a white man or a white woman or something of the sort. The story focuses on her and her adventure throughout. So the point of the story is also not only to show her journey throughout this forest, but also promote equality, even in the slightest way, or in a way that you kind of have to dig down and really get to. That's the premise of A Worn Path by Eudora Welty. Thank you.